Hi everyone, and welcome to this Week 1, Pod 1 session for the lecture series on cultural geographies. You're very welcome. What I want to think about is the question about who are you? And I ask that question because why we do what we do is often to understand the human condition, to understand our place in the world, to understand who we are, where we're from. And even when I'm saying those things, you'll note that who we are and the geography is inherently connected. We drift between ourselves and the places very, very easily. So, when we think about this question, who we are, we might be tempted to think it's just us, or actually just me. There's just an I, just me, myself and I, of which they're the only things that are really important. I'm defined by what I think and what I do. But even though we might be encouraged to think about by increasingly modern or indeed postmodern society, I think a lot of us consider, well, actually, the human condition is a social condition. We are social beings. It's not simply I, but there might be a we. We might be defined by our family, by our friends, by our social networks. Our social networks through social media, as well as physical, intimate relationships that we have. So others come to define us as well. So it doesn't take us long to think, actually, no, we're not just I, we're a we. It's not just me, I'm a social being. But of course, human geographers would consider that to be extended further, to say, no, actually, we're spatial beings too, that we are defined not simply by our social relationships, but by our geographical relationships, where we grew up, our houses, where we're confined to or where we're not confined to, by social distancing, by where we want to go on holiday, where we dream of living in the future. Place and geography are as influential to the human condition, are as definitive of the human condition as social relationships are too. So human geographers would say, actually, we are all spatial beings. But of course, this module is about cultural geography, and I think culture plays a key role here too. We would say, actually, it's not just people, and it's not just places, but there's a third dimension here. There's a cultural dimension here, and we are influenced by these three different relationships. And here's a pictorial representation to help us, and each of these key three blobs, think, okay, put you in one of them. Now, if we were doing this in class, I kid you not, I would get you to play with plasticine now. If you have plasticine in where you are right now, do this. In one of these blobs, think about yourself, about your identity, about you, and make a little plasticine thing that sums up you somehow. And then in the second blob, in the class, I'd get someone else, I'd chuck in plasticine and say, make something to do with culture. Anything you like that might stand for culture, whatever you think it happens to be. And then thirdly, get someone to make something to do with place or geography out of plasticine. And whilst I'm wittering on, they would be making their things, and then I'd get some chopsticks and I'd join them together into this molecule of people, place and culture. And when we look out in the world out there's my garden, that's where I'm looking, I'm thinking, actually, what we're studying when we're thinking about the human condition isn't humans in isolation, isn't humans, your plasticine thing, in isolation, it's not just humans and places connected by that chopstick, it's humans and places and culture. And if we looked into a microscope and looked underneath, what would be the thing in our petri dish? That's the molecule we would see as cultural geographers. And that's what we're looking at, this three-way relationship. We're looking at the relations between people, places and culture. And because these relationships are reciprocal in nature, people influence places and places influence culture and culture influences people, but also the other way around. People influence culture and culture influence places and places influence people. And this ongoing recomposition of these three key relationships come to define what it is that cultural geographers look at.
Other end of it. I just wanted people to be able to come out here and look back at the city that probably many of them will live in anyway, and really look at it. We are not like animals, the victims of a already ordained order. We make this world, and we can't, pretend that somehow we aren't responsible for it. We are, every single bit of it.